Hey guys, welcome back. This is my official birth story. It did not quite go as planned. I hated my doctor. Everything she said was a crock of shit. I didn't trust her or the staff or the hospital. Honestly, I could have given birth in the middle of the woods like a fucking animal and been more comfortable than I was in that hospital. I feel like my doctor was just nodding and smiling and when I was telling her like what I expected out of when I gave her my birth plan. Like I literally typed up a birth plan, printed out copies for the whole staff. We talked about it during my prenatal appointments, like what I wanted. And I feel like she thought I wasn't going to be able to do it natural. So she was just like, yeah, okay. And then when it came time, she was irritated that she wasn't getting her way, I guess. And like she was trying to push me to do things I didn't want to do. And it was just really annoying. So next time I'm staying home and doing it by myself. So let's get into it. It was the day of my due date, the morning of. I went to my doctor's office to get a stretch and sweep, which I didn't do enough research on. I shouldn't have done that. And next time I will not be getting a stretch and sweep. But I got a stretch and sweep at 9 a.m. that morning. And then I just came home and was chilling. Around 5 p.m. that night, I started feeling crampy, which wasn't out of the norm. Oh, I also drank castor oil. That was also a mistake. So I came home, drank castor oil, and then at 5 p.m. I started feeling crampy, which wasn't out of the ordinary because I started getting Braxton Hicks contractions super early on in my pregnancy. So many Braxton Hicks contractions that when I went in for my stretch and sweep that morning, I was 4.5 centimeters dilated already and 70% effaced. So I started dilating around 32 weeks, which is when I started feeling like really regular Braxton Hicks contractions. And so yeah, cramping was not out of the ordinary for me, but I noticed they were coming pretty regularly. And so I kind of thought, okay, maybe this is false labor because I drank that castor oil and I got the stretch and sweep. And so like I read that is a thing. Like you can feel crampy and think you're going into labor, but you're not, just because of all the commotion down there that day. So I waited till about 6. After an hour, they stayed pretty regular, so I drew a warm bath. I took a bath to see if I relaxed everything, maybe it would go away, and it didn't. So by 7, my mom was here from Canada, and Rendon was home from work by that time. So by 7 o'clock, it had been 2 hours. My contractions were like 2 to 3 minutes apart, and my mom was flipping out. She was like, you're in labor, and Rendon was like, oh, it's time, you know, like he was freaking out. He was trying not to, but he totally was. It was adorable. But I really did not believe that I was in labor because it just didn't hurt. Like it was literally the equivalent of period cramps, and I just had it in my mind that like from start to finish labor would be like super painful, and my water would break and I'd be like, and that wasn't it at all. Like it was super bearable. So I called my doctor around 7 because my mom and Rendon were kind of freaking me out at that point. I was thinking, oh my God, could this be it? So I called her and I was like, I don't know if I'm in labor. It doesn't really hurt, but like the contractions are staying regular. And she was like, well, there's no way to know. You just got to come in and we'll see. And if not, we'll just send you back home. So I was like, all right. So I braided my hair and got dressed and we left. And I was in denial. I think my mom knew. Rendon definitely knew. It was so funny. He was taking the bags to the car, and he picks them up and he's like you could hear him like breathing like super heavy. He was so nervous. It was really cute, but I was like the most calm out of everybody. And so we got there, they put me in a room, and by that time I was 5 centimeters dilated and 90% effaced. So my body was doing some work. They put the like contraction thingy on me, and she was like, oh, yep, you're in labor. And that's when it really hit me. Up until that moment, I was like, they're gonna send me back home. Like, I'm just not, it didn't hurt. So they left me in that room for an hour, and they checked me again. I was still 5 centimeters. So they wanted to start me on Pitocin. And it made me so mad. Like, did I not just give you my birth plan? I don't want fucking Pitocin. But anyway, I said, okay, just give me 1 more hour. And I spent the entire hour walking around that hospital, contractions and all. The entire hour, I did not stop. At the end of the hour, I was 6 centimeters dilated. That's what I wanted to do. I was like, in your face. Ugh. And then, so they got my room ready. So this was about, okay, hold on. We got there at 8. They checked me at 9. And I hadn't progressed. So it was 10 o'clock at this time. I was 6 centimeters by 10 o'clock. And the contractions still didn't really hurt. When I was walking around, I kind of had to stop and just kind of be like, But still like a little bit more painful than period cramps. So like it started at period cramps, and then it kind of like went a little beyond that. It still didn't hurt that bad. So yeah, 10 o'clock, they checked me again. They got my like official birthing room ready. So we were in the room, I'd say about like 10:30 or 11. They checked me again at, when did they check me again? I don't actually know, but I spent a lot of time on the like the bouncy ball. That felt really, really good. They did have me hooked up to an IV. I didn't want any fluids because I brought my big jug with me. I never go anywhere without this thing. But I don't know. I just gave in. They had me hooked up to an IV, but it was on like one of those poles, so I could, oh my God, ow, I just slapped the fuck out of myself. Anyway, so I could walk around freely and stuff like that. So it was fine. So I spent a lot of time on the bouncy ball around, I'm not sure what time it was, around midnight. I would say around midnight, the contractions started getting a little bit more painful. I kind of had to start breathing through them. And they were coming every like 30 seconds to a minute apart. So I didn't have a lot of break in between. And it was just getting a little more painful. And by 1 o'clock, I think that's when they checked me. It was around 12:30 or 1 o'clock. They checked me again. And I was still 6 centimeters. So I had been through all these contractions. Granted, they didn't hurt that bad, but it's still exhausting. So I'd gone through all that all this time, and I still hadn't progressed, which isn't like not normal. First time births usually are at least 24 hours long. So, but I was disappointed for sure, because I felt like there was a lot going on, and there wasn't. So they wanted to break my water at that point to like get things going. And I actually had to think about it, honestly, because they kind of had me worried. My doctor was like, oh yeah, most people's waters have broken by this time, which totally isn't true. A lot of babies are actually born still in the amniotic sac, and that's completely fine. I can't say that enough. Your waters do not have to break in order for you to have a baby. In fact, it's better if it doesn't, because it's a lot less painful, and a baby can be born still in the amniotic sac and be completely fine. So I actually had to think about it, and I did, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna wait it out. And at 1:15 my water broke, so I didn't need their help. And holy shit, you guys, that's when everything changed. It's like I could feel him like plummet into me. Like, I don't even know how to describe the pain. It just became at that point unbearable. Not like immediately. I spent a good chunk after my water broke. I spent a good chunk of the like time handling it pretty well, I would say. I made it through the transition, which is when you dilate from 8 to 10 centimeters. That's the most painful part. So before that, the contractions got super, super painful. I had to breathe through them. I was no longer calm. Like before, I was like, like keeping my cool, like looking cute doing it. But after my water broke, those contractions had me acting a damn fool. I'm sure I looked so stupid, but I feel like I was handling it pretty well. And then the transition hit. It is the most painful part of labor by far. Literally, like, it's unbearable. It really is. Like, there's no other pain that I can compare it to. Like, just out of this world. I started shaking really bad, like uncontrollably shaking. I was sweating, but I was like super cold. They had to like put a blanket on me. Like, I was flipping out. I was coming apart. Super painful. And that's when Rendon like seriously stepped in. At that point, my mom and his mom were in the room, and they had to leave. Like, they could not actually watch me in that amount of pain. Like, it hurt them to watch me. They couldn't even look at me. Like, that's how much pain I was in. And so they left, and Rendon was right there with me. He was holding my hand. Like, he stepped up to the plate, and he was reciting like positive birth affirmations to me, like hypnobirthing affirmations. And he was like, well, I kept saying, I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. At this point, I really thought, I was like, this is gonna kill me. Like, there is no way that I can survive another contraction. I thought I was gonna die. So I was like, I can't. He said, Kate, yes, you can. You are doing it. And he was like, Kate, trust your body, trust your baby. You can do it. You're doing amazing. You're almost there. He's almost here. And he was like, women all over the world are giving birth with you right now. If they can do it, you can do it. Like, I mean, just affirmation after affirmation. He was firing them. And it really did help. Honestly, I would not have been able to hold out as long as, because I did end up asking for the epidural, but I would not have been able to wait that long to ask for it if he hadn't been there like coaching me through it. And the reason that I was able to give birth naturally, honestly, is because I waited so long to ask for the epidural. If I had asked for it any sooner, then I would have gotten it. But by the time I asked for the epidural, I was already 10 centimeters dilated, and I was like pushing my baby out. So he's literally the reason that I waited so long to ask for the epidural. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten the natural birth that I wanted. So I really do have him to thank for that. So yeah, eventually I was like, I need the epidural. And I think to keep me calm, the nurse was like, okay, I'll go let them know. So I was like, hell yeah, I'm about to get that epidural. Like, this is gonna end, I'm gonna survive. And then in walks my doctor with her little birthing tray, and she was like, all right, let's have this baby. And I was like, no, where's my epidural? And she said, no, ma'am, you're having this baby now. And I don't know why I didn't already know that, because at that point fetal ejection reflex had already kicked in. I was already like instinctively pushing. But all I could think at that point was like, I need this to end. So I didn't actually realize that I was like pushing him out. And I think Rendon knew, like he could see that I was panicking a little bit. So he was like, Kate, I see him. Kate, I see him. And that was a lie. He could not see him, but I think he knew like that's the push that I needed. So it really did pep me up. I heard that and I was like, oh my God, like he can see him. So I flipped over and I got on my hands and knees. And at that point I had already moved from the birthing ball to the bed. The birthing ball just stopped doing it for me at a certain point. And so I got in bed and I was moving around, trying different positions to help ease the pain and stuff. So I was already in bed, and they had the back all the way up, and then like they had the bottom like that. So I was like sitting, like kind of leaning forward. So we moved the bed down back into a normal position, and I flipped over on my hands and knees, and I heard my doctor say, I can't deliver her like that. She's talking to the nurse. And so the nurse came up to my shoulder and she was like, okay, Dr. Adams can't deliver you this way, so between contractions they're gonna flip you over. And I was like, too bad. Obviously like a lot less calm than that, but I said too bad. And it took about 4 or 5 pushes, and he just slid out like butter. Actually, that's not true. At one point, half of his head was out to like around his eyeballs. And so every time I had a contraction, I was pushing. And let me tell you what fetal ejection reflex is like. Okay, it's just like diarrhea. And I'm sorry if I'm being too gross, but this is literally the way it is. If you've ever had diarrhea, you know that it's coming whether you like it or not. You can't stop it from happening. But when you sit on the toilet, even though you don't have to push it out, you still have that like pushing reflex where you're just kind of like, ugh. That's fetal ejection reflex. It's coming whether you like it or not. So yeah, every time I had a contraction, that was happening. That like instinctive like pushing, like diarrhea. So I had a contraction, his head popped out, but only halfway. So he was like stuck right here. And then I had to wait till the next contraction to get the rest of his head out. And I remember that moment vividly. They call that the Ring of Fire, and they call it the Ring of Fire for a reason. It is not like a sunburn. It's not like, oh, I accidentally nicked myself with my hair straightener. It is 100% like someone is holding a flame to your vagina and they won't leave. You're being burned alive basically from the vagina up. So it burned really bad, but at that point my contractions were like 20 seconds apart. So it didn't last very long. And then, yeah. So he came out super easy. And I think it is because I was on my hands and knees. On my hands and knees was just the way that I felt the best. Like it just felt good to me. Obviously the best way to give birth is just standing up. Yeah, there's a lot of different positions that you can do it. But he came out really easy, so I feel like I picked a pretty good one. And they put him on my chest immediately, and I didn't cry. That was the question that I got. I didn't cry, and I really thought that I would, because while I was pregnant, I would watch like on YouTube live natural births, and just to kind of prepare myself. And I would cry every single time. And so I really thought I was gonna cry, but I didn't. I think I was in like shock. I didn't have a moment. And it's the craziest thing because you're in pain for so long, like throughout the labor, and then when you're pushing, like it hurts. And then as soon as he came out, it's like everything went numb. Like I didn't feel anything anymore. they put him on my chest, and I felt fine. I felt good. I wasn't tired anymore. Like it was like just really the weirdest thing. And I was just in shock, and I kept saying, hi baby, and just trying to like warm him up and just looking at him. And I just didn't cry. I don't know. It was weird. I just like my maternal instinct took over, and I just wanted to like take care of him and like make sure he was okay. And I didn't have a moment to like let it out, I guess. And then, so they like wiped him off so that he wasn't as gross. And as soon as he calmed down, I put him on my boob to try and breastfeed, and he took to it immediately. He never had a problem breastfeeding ever. We're still exclusively breastfeeding to this day. I mean, he was made for the boob. So yeah, I think that concludes my birth story. I feel like I answered most of the questions. Like I did that Ask Me a Birth Story question on my Instagram. I feel like I answered most everybody's questions like throughout my story. I think I addressed most of the questions. Somebody asked, did I poo during labor? And I hate this question because I totally did. Which was a fear of mine. I didn't want to do that. I just really didn't. But it was right before I started pushing my baby out. I felt, and it wasn't the same kind of like I knew the difference between like, oh, I have to push my baby out and oh, I have to poop. It was right before I had to push my baby out. So I wasn't like quite there yet. And I knew that I had to poo. I felt it. And so I looked at Rendon, I looked at my nurse, and I was like, I gotta poo. So I tried to get out of bed, and she was like, go ahead. And I was like, no, I gotta go. And I was just kept trying to get to the bathroom, and she was like, no, you have to stay in bed. You're about to have a baby. And I was like, no, but I couldn't help it. And so I pooed. And in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter because there's so much other things going on. Like no one really cares that you poop, but it really bothers me to this day that I did that. And that's like the most traumatizing part of the whole entire birth for Rendon too. Like if you ask him, and he will randomly bring it up just throughout the day. Like he'll just look at me and he'll be like, Kate, I watched you shit for no reason other than to embarrass me, I guess. I don't know. He's like completely traumatized by it. If you know that you want to have an epidural though, I wouldn't be worried about that because the odds are if you do poop, you're not even gonna know that it happened. But if you're planning on going natural, you're probably gonna poop. So you got to get over that fear. I was eating like throughout my labor, which is generally, my nose is so itchy. Ugh. Anyway, eating during labor is generally frowned upon because in the event that you do have to have a C-section, they want your stomach to be empty. But that's something that I wanted to do because I thought I would be in labor for at least 24 hours. So I wanted to be able to have the energy to keep going because it's exhausting. It is exhausting. So I was eating throughout my labor, like earlier on before it got like too painful. I might cut this out of the video actually because I just don't know if I want people to know that I did that. Oh, what is your biggest fear about giving birth at home? This is a person that I have previously talked to on Instagram about like wanting to give birth at home, so she knew that's what I wanted. Nothing, honestly. Obviously something going wrong, but I think that's every mother's fear, whether you're in a hospital, a birth center, at home, like no matter what, like a mom is always going to be worried that something is going to go wrong. So I don't think that's necessarily specific to me being at home, but I guess my greatest fear is something going wrong. But other than that, like I know what to expect now because I've already done it, and I'm just really excited more than anything. I'm excited to have another baby and to give birth again because it's really hard to explain like the level of awesome that giving birth is to me. Like, that was the best day of my life and the proudest moment of my life, and just my favorite story to tell, which is also why I wanted to do this video. I love birth, and I'm just super excited to do it again at home, and I don't really have any other fears other than, you know, something going wrong with me baby. But yeah, I think that was, let me check, but I think that was, those are the only two like questions that I left unaddressed. Yeah. So that's it. Thanks for listening. I hope you liked my video. I might keep making YouTube videos just about like my daily life, my new life with a baby or something. I don't know if I'm that interesting, but I might make more videos. So stay tuned for more if you like me.